All right, so we'll get started. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for SLCP meetup. We're going to be discussing collections today. Um, so the collections, uh, oh man, the collections portion of the action item form, the topics that are addressed in this section, obviously deal with collection development policies and how we incorporate the principle of the triple bottom line definition of sustainability into that, weeding materials, adopting an electronic records management system, sharing electronic journals among staff when ordering materials, the inclusive services assessment, and just ways to adjust the library interior to demonstrate a better use of our collection and the available space. So we have two guest volunteers who are going to share today, and then we will open it up for questions and discussion on the topic of collections. And then if anyone has any other topics that they would like to discuss in relation to the other sections of the action item form, by all means we can do that. Our first guest is Azuree Agnello from the West Babylon Public Library, and she's going to share with us, her experience working through this section. Welcome, Azuree. Thank you for.
Hello. Thanks for having me. It took us a little while to get through everything as we did our journey through the SLA, action forms. But I think collections is kind of fun because, who doesn't like buying and weeding and getting new stuff and getting rid of old stuff and, the ugly books, the good books. So we did a giant nonfiction weed and we ended up subscribing to core collections. So that helped us out as we were getting rid of things we were replacing with better material than just, like what was out there. It was a little bit better than just using a journal because you could focus your search more. So that worked out pretty well for us and it was nice. And then because of the weed, we ended up actually weeding quite a bit out that we couldn't figure out why we'd kept so many things. We were able to pull down a couple of stacks towards the back of the library, and we put in more community tables because we have so many people studying and using our quiet rooms or whatever. So we were able to put in two bigger tables for like group study, and we also got two booths, the privacy booths that are quiet and they're soundproof and all that kind of good stuff. So now we have 3 regular quiet rooms and then 2 privacy booths, and now these 2 study tables in the back. This also allowed us to move our collections around a little bit. And as we started a maker space, we were able to pull teen books and everything that were in that maker space, taking up room and being separate from the other teen books that were in the regular collection. And we were able to make just 2 rows of just YA. So it's like audiobooks, biography, nonfiction, paperbacks, graphic novels, all in that area with the study tables. So the kids, it's kind of good for the teens because they come in, they do their group project and all their materials are right there. And so it really like defined that space and gave us a little bit of a, way to put them in a place where they could still be together, but not as interruptive to like everybody else that's like studying. So it worked out pretty well. And then we took down some stacks along the back wall, which had been empty for a while. And it gave us a chance to put in slat walls. So we started a collection for new readers and English learners. And then, so there's a collection of books back there. And then there's also on the slat wall, we keep it updated monthly with different, programs, like places that you can take more classes because we have a twice a month class. So it gave us, a chance to put like, so if people were looking for more places to learn, they could go to that wall and see. There's also a job section. So we were able to put, any of the Department of Labor stuff, if they're doing resume writing workshops, if they're doing like public speaking or whatever, if If there's job fairs going on, whether in person or virtually in other places, those are all back there and they get updated monthly. So people can go back there and use that as a resource. And then we also have one that is what's my third one? Sorry. Is continuing education. So we update with any of the high schools in the area that are doing continuing education classes and all that kind of good stuff. Because sometimes people are looking for computer classes or different things like that, or more English classes. So that's all back there as well. And it became this little area where people who were already studying back there and all our literacy tutors who were coming and using that area in general now have all those resources in one spot. And they can, it's like one stop and they don't have to go all around the library to find the material that they're looking for. And lastly, we revamped our CD collection. So we went away from Anscar and just started putting like pop rock, classical, so we combined a whole bunch of sections to make everything easier to browse. And we were able to cut out a few of those giant CD racks to make a larger cafe area for people to like hang out in and have fun. And our sustainable library collection is up there so people can browse that. That's right by the new books. So that kind of made it like a nice hangout section, grab a cup of coffee, take a look at what we have over there. And, people can just hang out up front there. So, yeah.
Thank you, Azuree. Thank you for sharing. I think one of the coolest parts, for me at least, is hearing about weeding the collection and getting rid of some the unused stuff or the old or unrelevant kind of items, and then seeing what you can do with that additional space. It sounds
Right.
like you guys did
And inevitably, you get rid of something, and a week later, somebody says, "Do you have any books on whatever?" And those books hadn't been checked out in 15 years. Like,
yeah,
how do you want them? So,
yeah,
that always
exactly.
happens, but
It's inevitable, right?
yeah. I saw someone had a question about how we choose the sustainability.
Yes, yeah. How do you make decisions on what goes in a sustainability library collection?
So we started with what we already had, and our head of tech services went through looking at like Dewey numbers and subject headings and all that kind of good stuff. And she pulled a bunch that were, like we had stuff on recycling, reusables, composting, different things like that, so she pulled all those out. And now as the librarians who order for the nonfiction collection, as they go through and look for, books to order, they'll actually mark when we add something in Baker and Taylor in the notes field, they'll mark it as SLI. And I mean, she inevitably makes the final decision to make sure or whatever, but most of the time the librarians are pretty much on track because they know the stuff that's over there. And so then it just gets the tech services knows to put the sticker on it, like as soon as they catalog it. So that way it'll be shelved in the SLI collection.
Awesome. Also, Lori asked, what do you do with the weed material? Which is a question that comes up quite a bit, and I think everybody struggles with this one. So,
We
yeah.
started with Better World Books and we tried to do that, but we found that every time we went to scan something, they wouldn't take it. It wasn't, we couldn't ship it and all that kind of good stuff. So if it's, depending on what it is, if it's fiction, if it's things that aren't like data, like medical knowledge, that kind of stuff. If it's fiction and like general books on plants, snakes, that kind of stuff, cookbooks, whatever, they'll go into our for sale book section. And the stuff that unfortunately does get thrown away because there's really nothing else that we can do with it. But we try to put as much as we can, as long as it's not, like I said, out of date, legal material that's out of date, medical material that's out of date, or if it's just in really bad, condition. So, and we
This,
use Musty, which I think a lot of people do. I don't know if everyone's heard of that.
what was it?
It's called Musty.
Oh, okay.
And you're not going to be able to see my little weeding sheet in the camera, but we have like a little thing. I just printed one out so that way everyone can see it. But it goes by like M is for misleading or factually inaccurate. U is ugly, worn beyond mending or rebinding. S is superseded by a new edition or better material on the subject. T is trivial or no discernible literary worth. I is irrelevant to the needs and interests of your community. And then E is material or information may be obtained elsewhere. So we
Oh,
usually try to go by that as we weed. If we can, is there a new edition? Okay, great. Let's get the new edition. We'll get rid of the old edition, that kind of stuff.
Oh,
So,
that's very cool. Thank you for
yeah,
sharing. Yeah, Denise said that they also use the
yeah,
Musty
group. Yeah.
crew did as well. Um, Rachel asks, how do you weigh making collections decisions on circulation statistics versus considering other factors, creating a rich, diverse collection?
So our like the crew method, whatever, we go by Dewey Decimal Number, and each number has a certain amount of time that you're supposed to keep it based on whether it's 10 years, 5 years, 20 years, like depending on what type of material it is. So we use that as kind of like the first look, but is it still in that window? Yes, it is. Okay, we're going to keep that unless we can find something that's slightly better, updated. If it's out of that window, then it's by circulation. So, if it hasn't circulated after that, even longer than that, it's going to go. And usually we wouldn't replace it because it means nobody's really looking at it. And then, like I said, we used core collections when we did the big weed. So that was, you were able to scope um, your searches according to Dewey number and then map it according to how many stars, a 1 to 5, so we would go with like 4 or 5 if we could. And that was great. So that helped us buy better books that were more like peer reviewed and that kind of stuff. So it made it a little bit easier to know that the book was a better material than just a random book that you might find. So yeah.
This same question came up earlier this week. Linda Meglio, she's one of the
Rubberfield.
mentors for the SLI, and she works over at Harborfields. And she sent me a document that was shared with her, and it's right along this, the same thought process of dealing with your collection and what you can do with the books, and some of the ideas that are in it are repurposing the books as art or decorations, maybe putting that into like a program for teens or something, or setting up little free libraries. um, Obviously not all these will work for every community, and I'm sure a lot of you are already doing these things, but reaching out to local, bookstores or anybody who kind of sells, books or secondhand items, the free bookshelves, like you had mentioned. Let's see, contacting local literacy nonprofits. Um, Things like that. So yeah, this is definitely a topic that
Yeah. And
is
we've saved like for crickets, like we've done cricket cutting with books and we've done different things. So when the books are still in good condition, one of our librarians who does a lot of the cricketing, she'll pull things that have like either cool pictures or like, that if you were to cut something out of the wording, it's not going to be controversial, and so she'll use those too as they do projects like leaves in the fall or like part of like hearts or a big display on the back wall or, so we do use them, but the amount that you end up getting rid of and the amount that you can actually reuse and whatever is the balance isn't always there, but we try to do
yeah,
as much as we can.
true, very.
Um, and somebody
There's
asked about the Dewey Decimal System.
Yeah, please give an example of how you use the Dewey Decimal System to weed.
So for example, I did print my thing out. So just going by Dewey number. So it breaks it down by number. So generalities 0 to 001 is UFOs, parapsychology. You keep that for 10 years. 010 is bibliography, keep for 10 years. 004 is career information. You only keep that for 3 years since things move and update so quickly. And it just goes on, it breaks it down by each Dewey number, and we all get the list, which you won't be able to see here, but um, and so when we do the weed, if everyone gets a section to weed, and the head of reference, she sends that out. Here's the guidelines, you should strictly, if it won an award, you're keeping it. If it, there's certain things, if more than 25 libraries have it, it's probably worth saving. So if we can update it, great. If not, you should probably keep it. If not a lot of libraries have it, and it's not circulating, okay, that could probably go. And then there's also a second check. The head of tech services, or the head of reference, she tends to also go through, like people put their books in the back that they think they should get rid of, and they make notes. We're going to replace this, a newer edition. This could just go. And so somebody's constantly checking. So there's a second check after that to make sure that something doesn't get discarded that should have been kept. So.
Can you send me that list so I
Sure.
can share it with
Yeah,
everybody?
absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah, I will. I'll email that out to everyone
Yeah.
who's here today. That way, seems to be a lot of questions about that.
It makes it quite kind of easy to do, you know. I mean, there's still always questions like, do we really need this book on whatever? But it is a really nice guideline to start with when you're, going through your books.
Absolutely. And there was another question. Does your library encourage repair of books as part of incorporating?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, one of our tech services women, she's great at trying to fix spines and, like all that kind of good stuff. And she really only if she can't do it, will she come to you and she's like, I tried so hard, is it okay? And I was like, and you're like, yeah, it's fine. It's okay, because she puts a lot of effort into it. So
Absolutely.
she's always, you always see like a whole stack with her like rubber banded and there's like rubber cement and, she's got like a whole thing going behind her desk. It's gonna be a science project. So.
Absolutely. Um, uh, Also, does the weeding guidelines, does it apply to children and adult collections?
Yeah, they do both.
Oh,
Children's, they do still follow it, but theirs, because the room is much smaller, they also have space constraints. So sometimes they might have to knock a couple years off, of what's being used and what's not, just because of spacing issues.
yeah.
But they still follow the general guidelines, yeah.
Awesome, awesome. All right, thank you, Azuree. Appreciate that. We'll get that document and we'll share it with everyone. Thank you for sharing. We definitely appreciate it, and thank you everyone for your questions. Um, so moving on, we will get to our second volunteer speaker who's offered to share. We have Courtney Tshalis from the Millbrook Library. Courtney, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I have a couple of pictures because I like pictures. So I'm gonna present that and just let me know if you can see it.
Yeah, you're good.
Very cool. So I wasn't sure what to talk about really, so I figured I'd start with like a little bit of a description of just like our collections in general. So we have our children's section has a lot of different collections, but we definitely have our board books separated out. So the picture on the left is our picture of like our board book section. We have some stuff on display. You might be able to tell we try to pick like diverse topics, books that feature like diverse characters whenever we're making collection development decisions. And that's something that I think since I started almost 5 years ago, we've really ramped up on because our collection was very old, I'll say, and there wasn't a lot of diverse representation. But we have kind of things separated out through by ages. So we have the board books, we have easy reader books that are separated by level. So level 1, 2, 3, and 4. We have our graphic novel section on the right, which is really popular with the kids these days. And we're actually working on a project right now that actually started today to kind of separate out our junior fiction section a little bit more. So we have right now pretty much all the chapter books, whether it's like Magic Treehouse or like Diary of Wimpy Kid or Percy Jackson are in the same area. So we're breaking them down more by age level. So stuff like second through like early fourth grade are going to be in one section, and then stuff that's like fourth to sixth is going to be in another section, just to try and help our patrons differentiate between age level a little bit more. So those are just some examples of how we have stuff separated out in our kids' room. We have been working, like I said, really hard to add more books, nonfiction and fiction, into our collection. We recently got a grant, I believe it was last year, from our library system, the Mid-Hudson Library System, that we use to target our nonfiction section, specifically our kids nonfiction section. And we did kind of a collection audit and we saw like what sections were the most outdated, where we needed help. So we purposely targeted biographies, religion, and world history. So these are a couple of the books that we got through that grant. And that was really helpful because we could buy I would think it was like 100+ books with this grant that are added into our collection, and we now have a lot more representation, which is great. This is our young adult section. We do have a separate young adult section. The fiction section is in the teen room, and the nonfiction is incorporated into the adult section. And this is kind of to acknowledge that, like, for nonfiction stuff, not everybody who is an adult may be reading like at what is considered an adult level, right? So people might need more like simplistic language or things like that. So that's why we combine our young adult into the adult section. But for our fiction section, it is in the young adult room, the teen room, and we genreified it about a year and a half ago, which has been really good. So we have, you can see kind of the section is separated out by genre. We have mystery and thriller, and everything's color coded. So mystery and thriller has a light blue sticker with MYS on it. Fantasy has a dark blue sticker with FAN. And this is really, I think, encourage the teens to like browse and feel confident looking for stuff on their own. And we get less questions about like, oh, can you help me find a book like this one? Because they can do it themselves now, which is really nice. For kind of our older patrons, we do have a magnifying machine. Honestly, the teenagers really like to use it. Every couple of years, a new group of teenagers will find it and be like, whoa, look at, you can magnify this book really crazy. So it is there for people to use if they need it. It is a screen that magnifies essentially. We do have kind of like a magnifying light, so a light with a magnifying glass on it in our fiction room by the newspapers, and we have a lot of patrons that use that as like an accessibility tool to be able to read the newspapers a little bit better. We do have a lot of seniors that come in and read the newspapers each day. By the end of the day, they're all kind of crumpled and well loved, I'd say. But that's something that I know some libraries have kind of moved away from like the physical copies, but that's something that's still really important to our community. And I think we would have an uprising if we didn't buy them. So we do have a pretty extensive large print collection. So one of the aisles for our large print is on the left here. There's two full aisles altogether. And that gets checked out pretty often. There's been a slight uptick recently, I'd say, just because our population trends towards older overall. And we do have also a pretty big Spanish speaking population. So we do have a physical section of books in Spanish, both for kids and adults. The kids' books are kind of mixed in with a sticker, and the adults are in like one specific section in the nonfiction section. For weeding, I am the one that does the adult weeding for books, nonfiction, and fiction. So basically it's an ongoing project, and like every couple of weeks I make sure I have time to go into the stacks of the list and take a look at stuff. We are really lucky in the sense that we're a big library for the population that we serve. So we serve a population of just over 4,500, but we're 15,000 square feet. So we're very big compared to our population size, which is kind of nice because we don't really need to worry about collection space. As long as I keep on top of the weeding, we can rotate things in and out pretty easily, which is nice. And when we do weed stuff, we always put it on these free carts. And we have 2 free carts, one's by either entrance of the library, and stuff goes off there so fast, which is great. So it's been sometimes it can get kind of overwhelming, and that's when, like, if I'm going to the Mid-Hudson Library System for a meeting or training, they do have a Better World Books drop-off location, so I'll bring a couple bags over there and drop them off there. But for the most part, we can get rid of most of our weeded stuff, or just like older donations that we're not going to put in our book sale through this way, which is really nice. Not sure how many of them actually come back to us, because I think a lot of people just like read them and then stick them back on the cart, but that's okay. And I wanted to do a plug for e-content. So e-content is really important. I think ebooks and audiobooks, e-magazines, stuff through Libby, Hoopla, even though Hoopla has been a little problematic with AI content these days. I think not everybody remembers that e-content is really accessible and a really good way to make your collection accessible to a wide population. So people can check it out from home. So whether they're homebound because they're older and have mobility issues, if they have a physical disability, or they're just a parent that can't get to the library when you're open because they're booked constantly with their kids' schedule or work, that accessibility feature is super nice. They are automatically returned. So for libraries that still charge late fees, that's not something that patrons have to worry about. I know I've been working on a study over the past couple of months, which focuses on accessibility in public libraries, which I'm not going to get into it because I'll be here for 3 hours. But basically, one of the things that I found is the people that I were interviewing saying that they really, really liked ebooks and e-content because it was automatically returned. They didn't need to think about it, and they didn't need to worry about racking up late fees. Also, Libby has really great accessibility features like font size, background color, and design options, which they've expanded on, I feel like, over the past couple of years. And those are really great options for people. I have some examples on the next slide, which I'll show. And just the fact that they have different language options. So I've been trying to mindfully purchase more audiobooks in Spanish specifically, because I've noticed those tend to go out a little bit more, and it's good for people and who may not feel comfortable coming into the library right now, for various reasons, to have this kind of access from home. So Libby has this background feature that you can change. So you can change it from a light background to a dark background, which is the picture on the left. And they also have like a sepia tone one, which is really nice. And then they also have, besides different font sizes and styles, they also have a dyslexia friendly font, which is really nice. So I think that's something that I always try to bring up at like advocacy day stuff if I can, to people, like about why ebooks are so important. It's like, oh, accessibility, and people don't always think of it like that. So I wanted to give a plug for that. And then just to talk a little bit about our policy. I'm sure most people on this call have updated their collection development policy recently, over the past couple of years. Ours was less updated in 2023. We do include information on selection criteria and weeding criteria in the policy. We have information on the discard process, so basically how we get rid of our stuff, which is primarily the free book cart. And then we do link to ALA's Library Bill of Rights, freedom to read, and freedom to view statements. And we do have a request for reconsideration form, essentially, which thankfully, knock on wood, has not been used yet. But basically, this is like the overarching statement. Materials are selected in compliance with the mission and goals of the library on the basis of informational, educational, cultural, and recreational value. We do take patron suggestions for things to add to our collection, which I think is an important part of like building a collection that reflects the community. And then we do have our statement on censorship. So our policy says censorship is an individual matter. No individual may censor or restrict the freedom of others to read, listen to, or view library holdings. No material will be removed from the collection except under the procedures outlined in the reconsideration of library materials policy, which is attached to our collection development policy. So this is something that we knew was important to update, and we've updated it and tried to keep it relevant and current. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. Does anybody have any questions for Courtney? You can throw it in the chat or unmute. I see Rachel put something in the chat here. In the library profession, there has been increasing emphasis on actively valuing diversity in collections, cultural, racial, gender, etc. Diversity, this is very important to me. Also, I think values of biodiversity should also be included in what is meant in diverse collections, books that counter the exploration of our planet's biodiversity. Absolutely, Rachel. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I will say we do have a seed library kiosk that we got through a program in our system called the Library of Local program. And we do have a collection of kind of like sustainability topic books there too, that we were granted through this program. So we do have a nice collection there.
Yeah, we do the seed library too. We also have a plant swap table, so people can bring clippings of their plants, and other patrons can come and, you know, get stuff and replant at their own house.
Very nice. Awesome. we could open it up to if anybody has anything they'd like to share or talk about in relations to collections or have any questions, feel free.
I forgot to say too, when we did our weeding, we were able to stop shelving on the top and bottom shelves of the collection, and which makes it easier for, and I don't know how anybody knows me, but I'm extremely short. So you can actually reach the top shelves now and reach the books without having to stretch or use a stool, which is also dangerous because, we also have, like Courtney, we also have an large elderly population. So that way they don't have to be stretching or bending as much. And we were able to pull, because we have a back wall where we had more shelving, we were able to pull our oversized books out of the collection and put them against a back wall. That way, anybody who had mobility issues, wheelchairs, walkers, didn't have any issues with the books sticking out and blocking parts of the aisles. So that was also part of what we were trying to do with the weed.
Very smart. That's a really great point.
Yeah, because now they're on the back wall and it doesn't matter if they stick out because they're not enclosed in anything.
Yeah, that's great.
Hi, everybody. My name's Anna, and I'm from Australia, and I just had a couple questions. I visited a bunch of libraries and Alex at the office there in July from Australia, from Brisbane. And this morning at 4 a.m. in Brisbane, I'm up because we have a cyclone approaching, which is super sustainability relevant and not super frequent for Brisbane. But something I noticed across visiting the libraries in Suffolk County was a little bit around that height of shelves and access across collections. So I'm glad Courtney's on it. In Australia, I know Queensland specifically has guidelines around the height of shelves for different collections, like in children's areas, we don't put things too high, letting kids self-select items. And at large print especially, we also don't put items too high or too low because of accessibility. And that seemed like something that was less considered across the libraries I was visiting. So just think it's something that probably everyone should be considering a little bit more. If you're wanting to be, increasing access and inclusion, if kids can't reach their own books or if kids can't self-select their own items or any age, then you're kind of limiting their access. I know staff are obviously there to help, but that's not what everyone does necessarily. Queensland also has rules around the state I'm in. The width of aisles and all of that, that's pretty rigid, and that helps staff as well as customers in terms of access. I also found that there were a lot of labels being put on books, sometimes, which I can understand for staff to shelve. It identifies all the different collections, but the cost of stickers, the sustainability of stickers, and then just how customers then can find the items without staff help is sometimes a little bit limited, and we do a lot less labeling, I think, across Queensland libraries. So I kind of want to just add some of those things. And sometimes the shelves I've found, it seems quite crowded. So I know it seems typical across my library system of 10 libraries to have less items, just so it's easier to pull them out. And that's again about staff managing their health and safety as well as customers. So not packing your shelves quite so tight. Just some things for everybody to probably think about. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. Yeah, those are some really good observations. I definitely, always had trouble with those really tightly packed shelves when you try to take a book out and like end up things start falling on the floor, or if you have to really put too much energy into pulling it off the shelf. I think that's definitely an area that needs to be addressed. Thank you. You made a lot of great observations. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else have anything they'd like to mention or any questions, or feel free to unmute or pop it in the chat. We'll read it. Could be about collections, could be about any other area of the action item form or the program. I'd say the collections section is a very brief one for sure.
It is brief, but it's the one I think that makes a lot of impact when you do it. Because
Sure.
like you said, you can do so many things. You can make your shelves more accessible. You can make your collection better suited to your community. You could do, you really get more. And then you see it more, like as you're walking down the shelves, you see the impact that all your changes made to your library. And like you said, if the shelves are too packed, people are like, I can't find anything. So now it's easier to browse. And so it's a bigger impact.
Yes, that's a great point. Thank you for bringing that up. I mean, I agree. Even though it's a short section, it definitely, has a lot behind it that you'll see afterwards. After weeding and moving collections around. Rachel put in the chat, I like to do a lot of sustainability oriented displays. I'm doing an adult environmental fiction display soon. This helps highlight certain areas of the collection oriented to sustainability. And then in the chat, the Dewey Decimal chart is for nonfiction. Does it cover fiction too? Does anybody know the answer to that one?
It's mostly nonfiction. I mean, at least for us, fiction is definitely, some of it is self-weeding because popular authors, if you buy multiple copies because they're super popular, they self-weed themselves as they get damaged. But ours for fiction is really just like, has it circulated within the last 3 to 5 years? Based on the author's still popularity and that kind of stuff, or if it's part of a series and whatnot. So, I mean, because people's tastes change, what new TikTok book is, like super popular now and all that kind of stuff, that it definitely affects the collection.
My name's Tracy. I work at an academic library, a college library. And one of the things that I've done, I'm new to the Sustainable Libraries Initiative, so I haven't even seen the forms yet. But one of the things that I did with some weeding and extra space is created an area for student recommendations. And so I have a section of where specifically titles that they have recommended. So with the hope that seeing that they're coming from their peers, that they'll also get read and more suggestions will come in, and more of that kind of leisure reading will happen as well. We have a motto of read, think, be kind. And so it's really been, I've been just trying to make a big push to have our students re-engage with reading. And it's always just really heartwarming when I get a student, and usually it's a younger man who comes up and says, I haven't read since I was a kid. Like, what should I read? And so I feel like having that section of things that their peers have also recommended is going to be a really great way to hopefully build that and re-engage them with reading and a love of reading. And I love the ideas and all the space things that you were able to do at West Babylon, just by doing a good weed. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, Tracy. That sounds amazing. I like the idea of the peer selected books that to help encourage people to check out new materials. That's really great.
I feel like it helps them know that we're listening to them too, that they have a voice and they see themselves in the library. So it's just I think a really nice explicit way to show that.
Absolutely. That's very clever. I like that. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to share on the topic or any questions? I'll definitely be sure to include the documents that were discussed in the chat and discussed in the presentations today, so we can all have that afterwards moving forward. Mary put in the chat that their local county jail will accept donations of weeded adult fiction. I know there's libraries here on Long Island that do that as well. I'm sure I feel like obviously it depends on where, you know, where you are and what how much they're willing to accept. But that's another great option of where we can kind of help, you know, with our discarded materials. Anybody else before we sign off for the afternoon here? All right. Well, thank you, Azuree. Thank you, Courtney, for sharing. Anna, thank you. Tracy, thank you for sharing. Everybody, thank you for your questions, and we will see you next month. And have a great afternoon. Take care, everyone. Thank you.